You know, way before we got used to the idea of TV stars in politics, there was another entertainer who made this unbelievable leap. I'm talking from the glamour of Hollywood straight to the White House. This is the story of Ronald Reagan, the man who went from showman to statesman on the world stage.
So today, we're going to trace that incredible path. How does a film actor end up becoming the leader of the free world? And not just at any time, but during the really tense final years of the Cold War. It's a true story that honestly feels like it was written for the big screen itself.
Okay, so where does a story like this even begin? For Ronald Reagan, or Ronnie as folks knew him back then, it started in the small town of Dixon, Illinois. And his future looked pretty much mapped out, go to college, land a decent job, start a family. A very normal, all-American plan.
But you know how life is, right? Sometimes one little twist of fate just changes everything. For Reagan, that twist was getting a job, pretty much by chance, as a radio announcer. That one gig opened up a whole new world, and by 1937, he was packing his bags for Hollywood. That so-called ordinary path? Yeah, that was officially closed for business.
So after a movie career in what our source material kind of dryly calls some very unforgettable films, Reagan decided to use his most valuable asset, his fame, his name recognition, to step onto a completely different kind of stage. He was about to trade the silver screen for the California State House.
And you can probably guess how that went over. Almost nobody took him seriously. I mean, the idea of a movie star running for a major political office, it just sounded ridiculous to most people. But here's the key thing. Reagan absolutely did not care about the laughter coming from the cheap seats.
In fact, instead of listening to all the advice telling him to start small, maybe run for a state assembly seat or something, Reagan went big. He aimed right for the top job in the most populous state in the entire country, running for governor of California in 1966. And the result? It was a massive, total landslide victory.
But those 2 successful terms as governor, that wasn't the peak of his career. Oh no, that was just the launching pad. He used that incredible visibility to set his sights on the White House, stepping onto the national stage at a moment when America was facing some really deep, serious problems.
Think about the vibe in 1980. The U.S. was really struggling, stuck in a painful recession. And on the world stage, the feeling was that America was actually losing ground in the Cold War. The country was just desperate for a new direction, and Ronald Reagan was right there, ready to offer one.
And just like that, a whole new era began. The 1980s would become known as the decade of Reagan. It was a time that was really defined by his policies, sure, but also by his personality, and this powerful, overarching feeling of a great American rebound.
So, what did this turnaround actually look like? Well, by the time Reagan was up for re-election in 1984, the economy had absolutely roared back to life. I mean, it was booming. And on the international front, accounts from the time all suggest that his tough stance on communism meant that America's adversaries were starting to show the country a new level of respect.
Now, the 80s get a lot of criticism for being all about materialism and excess, right? But the records from that time point to something else happening under the surface. There was this growing sense that Americans, from the big cities to the smallest towns, were starting to find some common ground again, a real feeling of national unity.
And that right there brings us to a really interesting question, especially when you look at where we are today. What happened to that idea of a unified America? It's a pretty striking contrast, and it really makes you stop and think.
This whole idea is driven home by one last really powerful observation from our source. That whole political language we use today, red states and blue states, it just wasn't a thing people talked about back then. And why would it be? As the author points out, just about every state voted for Reagan, so it didn't matter. It's a wild reminder of a very, very different political time,